calme et douce. I showed them my guitar, broken, right there in front of them. For a second, I really thought that would be enough, because when something is that obvious, you don't expect resistance. You don't expect a process. You expect a human reaction, understanding, accountability, something simple. But instead, they looked at it, then at me, and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a surprised one, a professional smile, the kind that creates distance. And then they said, "You'll need to file a claim." That was the moment. Not when it broke, not when I saw it happen, but right there, standing still, holding something that mattered to me and realizing it didn't matter to them. And the strange part is, I didn't react. No anger, no raised voice, no scene, because in my mind, this was still simple, still fixable, still reasonable. I thought, this is just a step. This is just procedure. This will be solved. I just didn't know yet how wrong I was, because what led to that moment didn't start there. It started earlier, much earlier, with something so small most people would have missed it. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. That's it. 3 seconds. On a runway, before the plane even took off. And if I had looked away, even for a moment, none of this would have happened. My name is Dave Carroll, and at that time, I was just another passenger. No story, no attention, no reason to be remembered. Just a seat, a window, and a normal day. Window seat. Not for the view, but for the distance. That slight separation from everything around you. Half tired, half distracted. You know that state where your body is there, but your thoughts are already somewhere else. That was me. No expectations, no tension, no idea that something was about to change. The plane hadn't moved yet, still on the runway. Engines low, a quiet vibration under everything. People settling in, seat belts clicking, soft conversations. Routine, predictable, forgettable. And then a voice behind me. A woman. Not loud, not urgent, but different. There was something in her tone that didn't belong to that calm. She said, "Look, they're throwing guitars." At first, my brain rejected it because it didn't make sense. Throwing guitars? That's not something you expect to hear before a flight. So I stayed still for a moment, letting the words settle. Then something inside me said, "Look." So I leaned slightly toward the window, just enough. And that's when everything slowed down. I saw them. Baggage handlers, moving quickly, too quickly. No pauses, no care, no hesitation. Just motion, repeated, efficient, detached. And in their hands, instruments, guitar cases, recognizable, unmistakable. And they weren't placing them. They weren't careful. They were throwing them, one after another. Lift, swing, drop. Again, and again, and again. Like it didn't matter. Like it was nothing. Like it could be replaced. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Because suddenly, this wasn't something I was watching. It was something I was part of. Because somewhere down there, in that exact space, was my guitar. And that realization was instant. Not slow, not gradual, immediate. Because when something is yours, you don't analyze it, you feel it. It wasn't just a guitar. It was time, years of it. Practice, mistakes, progress, late nights, early mornings, every sound I worked on, every improvement I chased. It was a part of me, and I was sitting there, watching it happen, unable to do anything. That's the part people don't talk about. Not the damage, the helplessness, that quiet realization that you were present, aware, and completely powerless. I kept watching for a few seconds, hoping I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't mine. Maybe it was already loaded. Maybe it was safe. Your mind tries to protect you. It gives you small doubts, but deep down, I knew. Eventually, the plane moved, slowly pulling away. And just like that, the moment ended. But not really, because once you see something like that, it stays with you. Inside the plane, everything went back to normal. People talking, scrolling, laughing. But for me, something had already changed. I wasn't on that flight anymore. Not mentally. There was only one thought left. My guitar. The entire flight became a waiting game. Not for arrival, but for confirmation. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, but another part already knew I wasn't. And if you've ever had that feeling, that quiet certainty before reality hits, then you understand. So before we get to what happened next, take a second, because this story isn't just about me. If you've ever trusted a system and felt it fail you, if you've ever stayed calm and still been ignored, if you've ever done everything right and still ended up with the wrong result, then you're going to understand what comes next. And if you're still here right now, it means something in this connects with you. So take 1 second, like the video, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this only matter if people hear them. And what happened next was something no one expected. Not them, not me, and definitely not the millions of people who would eventually see it. So I filed the claim, just like they told me to. No resistance, no argument, because at that point, I still believed in the process. I believe that if you follow the steps, things get resolved. That's how it's supposed to work. You report the issue, they review it, they fix it. Simple. At least, that's what I thought. So I filled out everything, every detail, every form, every description. What happened, when it happened, where it happened. I made sure nothing was missing. Because when something matters to you, you don't rush it. You do it right. You double check. You make it easy for them to say yes. And when I was done, I felt something. Relief. Not because it was solved, but because it was in motion. Because now it was in their hands. And surely they would take responsibility. So I waited. A day passed, then another. Nothing. No update, no message, no confirmation. So I called, just to check, just to make sure everything was moving. And that's when I heard it for the first time. That tone, polite, calm, distant. Yes, sir, I see your file here. It's being processed. Please allow a little more time. It sounded reasonable, so I accepted it. Because again, that's how things work, right? You wait. So I waited. A few more days, then a week. Still nothing. So I called again. Different voice, same tone, same calm distance, same phrases. It's being reviewed. Another department is handling this. We'll get back to you. And at that point, something small started to shift. Not frustration, not yet, just doubt. A small question in the back of my mind. How long should something like this take? But I pushed it aside because I wanted to believe it was normal. Weeks passed, and every time I called, it was the same experience. Different person, same conversation, same invisible wall. And that's when I started noticing something subtle, but important. No one was actually solving anything. They were just moving me from one place to another, from one voice to another, from one explanation to another. And every time I thought I was getting closer, I was starting over. And that's when the pattern became clear. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't disorganization. This was a system designed to slow things down, to stretch time, to make everything feel complicated. Because the longer it takes, the more likely you are to give up. And most people do. Because life moves on. You get busy, you get tired, you start thinking, maybe it's not worth it. But for me, it wasn't just about the guitar. It was about something deeper, respect. Because when someone can clearly see what happened and still does nothing, it sends a message. And that message is simple. You don't matter enough. And that's hard to ignore. So I kept calling. Calm, always calm. I explained again and again and again. Every detail, every time, like it was the first conversation. And each time, I expected something different, some sign of progress,
some sense of ownership. But it never came. 3 months passed. Think about that. 3 months for something that was obvious on day one, and still nothing. No resolution, no responsibility, just delay. And then came the part that changed everything. The moment where the system stops pretending, the moment where the truth becomes clear. I made another call. Same process, same waiting music, same transfer, until finally someone picked up. I explained everything again, and this time there was a pause, a longer one. And for a second, I thought, this is it. This is the moment something changes. But instead, I heard the sentence, cold, direct, final. There's nothing we can do. No explanation, no apology, no attempt to fix it, just a wall and silence. And that's when it hit me, not emotionally, mentally. This was never going to be resolved, not through them, not through this system, because the system wasn't built to solve problems. It was built to manage them, to contain them, to delay them until people walk away. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not frustration, something sharper, clarity. Because once you understand the game, you stop playing it the same way. I realized something important. As long as I stayed inside their system, I would always lose, because they controlled the rules, the pace, the outcome. And I was just reacting, waiting, following, and getting nowhere. So I asked myself a simple question. What happens if I stop playing their game? What happens if I change the rules? And that's when the idea started forming. Not fully, not clearly, but enough. Enough to know this wasn't over, not even close. Because this was no longer about fixing a guitar, it was about being heard. And if they weren't going to listen, then I needed another way, a better way, a smarter way, something they couldn't ignore. But at that point, I didn't act immediately. I didn't rush, because this wasn't about reacting. This was about thinking, about stepping back and seeing the bigger picture. Because sometimes the most powerful move is not the fastest one. It's the one you take after you understand everything. And that's exactly what I was starting to do. If you've ever been in a situation like this, you know the feeling. That moment where you realize being right isn't enough, being patient isn't enough, even being calm isn't enough, because the system isn't built for fairness, it's built for efficiency. And sometimes you become the thing that gets pushed aside, delayed, ignored. And the question becomes, what do you do next? Do you give up? Do you move on? Or do you find another way? Because what I was about to do next was something completely different, something they didn't expect, something I didn't fully expect either, but it would change everything. And if you think this was just about frustration or revenge, it wasn't. It was about something much more powerful, control, taking it back in a way they couldn't stop and couldn't ignore. Because what happens when one voice refuses to stay quiet and finds a way to be heard by everyone?
I didn't react immediately. That's important, because most people react. They get angry, they argue, they push harder inside the same system, hoping something will change. But I had already understood something. Nothing was going to change in there. So I stepped back. Not physically, mentally. I stopped calling, stopped chasing, stopped trying to convince them. And for the first time since it happened, everything went quiet. No hold music, no transfers, no scripted responses. Just silence. And in that silence, something interesting happened. I started thinking clearly, not emotionally, not reactively, clearly. Because when the noise disappears, you start to see things differently. And that's when the real question appeared. If they control the system, how do I reach them without using it?
because as long as I stayed inside their process, I was invisible. Just another case number, another file, another problem to delay. But outside of it, that's where things change. That's where attention lives. That's where impact happens. And that's when I realized something simple. I already had something they didn't control. A voice, and more importantly, a way to use it. Music. So I picked up another guitar, not the broken one, a different one, and I sat down. No plan, no strategy, just a starting point. At first, it was just thoughts, fragments, pieces of what happened, what I saw, what I felt, what didn't make sense. I didn't try to make it perfect. I didn't try to make it impressive. I just made it honest. And that's where something shifted, because honesty connects, even when it's simple, especially when it's simple. I started putting words together, then sentences, then rhythm, and slowly it became something else, not just frustration, not just a story, something people could feel. And that's when I made a decision, a clear one. I wasn't going to attack them. I wasn't going to insult them. I wasn't going to exaggerate anything, because that would make it easy to dismiss, easy to ignore, easy to defend against. Instead, I was going to do something much more powerful. I was going to tell the truth, exactly as it happened. Nothing more, nothing less. Because the truth, when it's clear, when it's simple, when it's real, doesn't need anything else. So I kept writing, refining, adjusting, not to make it louder, but to make it clearer, more precise, more relatable, until it became a song. Simple, direct, a little ironic, but real. And when I finished, I sat there for a moment, thinking, because now there was another decision. Keep it to myself or share it. And that decision matters more than people realize, because creating something is one thing. Sharing it is something else entirely. Sharing means exposure, judgment, risk. It means people can ignore it, or worse, reject it. And most people stop right there. They create, but they don't share, because fear stops them. But I wasn't thinking about fear. I was thinking about impact. Because at this point, this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about everyone who had ever been ignored, dismissed, pushed aside. So I made a choice. I recorded it. No big production, no studio, no team. Just me, a camera, and a message. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real. And then I uploaded it. And at first, nothing happened. A few views, a couple of comments, quiet. No explosion, no immediate reaction, just stillness. And this is where most people get it wrong. They expect instant validation, instant success, but that's not how it works. Not always. Because sometimes things need time. And then something small happened. One person shared it. That's it, just one. But that's how it starts. Then another, then a few more. And slowly it began to move. Not fast, not yet, but enough to notice. And then it shifted. Because once something connects, it spreads differently. Then 10 people shared it, then 50, then hundreds. And right there, something changed. Because this was no longer just my story. It was becoming everyone's. And if you're still here right now, it means you feel it too. So before this goes further, take 1 second, like the video, subscribe, and share this with someone who's ever been ignored. Because what happens next is exactly why stories like this matter. Then thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. And suddenly, it exploded. The views started climbing fast, comments started pouring in, messages, stories, people sharing their own experiences. Because it wasn't about a guitar anymore. It was about something deeper, something universal. Being ignored, being dismissed, being treated like you don't matter.
And now millions of people were watching, listening, feeling it. And just like that, the story they ignored in private became public. And once something becomes public, everything changes. Because now they couldn't control it anymore. They couldn't delay it. They couldn't redirect it. They couldn't silence it. Because it wasn't just me anymore. It was everyone who had ever felt the same. And that's when the real impact began. Media started noticing. Articles were written. People started talking. And suddenly, this small moment on a runway before a flight became something much bigger. Something they couldn't ignore. And something I couldn't have predicted. Because when you create something real, you never fully control where it goes. But one thing was certain. This was no longer a private story. This was something else, something powerful. And it was only just beginning.
By now, the song had taken on a life of its own. Millions of people had seen it, shared it, commented, reacted. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel famous. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt different, calm, focused, clear. Because the goal was never revenge. It was always impact, real impact, something that lasts. Because anyone can get angry, anyone can complain, but not everyone can turn frustration into something that reaches the world. And that's what happened. People started sending messages, stories, photos, videos, comments, from strangers, from different countries, people who had been ignored before, people who felt dismissed, people who suddenly realized they weren't alone. Then the media noticed. News outlets picked up the story, and suddenly the same people who had ignored me were on the spot, under a spotlight, because now everyone was watching. And here's the irony. I never yelled. I never attacked. I never insulted anyone. I just told the truth. And the truth is louder than anything else. The story went viral, millions of views, across countries, across languages, and suddenly it wasn't about a guitar anymore. It was about respect, responsibility, being seen, being heard. And the lesson was simple. When people ignore you, you have a choice: react or create. Most people react, very few create, and that difference changes everything. And as I watched the story grow, I realized something even bigger. Winning doesn't feel like you imagine. There's no explosion, no grand finale, no big celebration. It's a quiet realization that things are different now, that you are different now, that you've taken control. And the people who ignored me, they moved on. They made statements. They tried to explain. But the story stayed. Because once something becomes public, it doesn't disappear. It becomes a lesson, a reference, a reminder of what happens when someone refuses to be silent. And that's the power of creating, the power of turning frustration into impact. Because life will test you, people will dismiss you, underestimate you, ignore you. And in those moments, you have a choice: react or create. I chose to create, and by doing that, I wasn't just solving a problem, I was leaving something behind, something real, something lasting, something people could learn from. And the lesson? It's simple. The moment that frustrates you most might be the moment that defines you, not because of what happened, but because of what you do next. Because somewhere, someone is listening, someone is watching, someone is waiting for a story like yours. So when your moment comes, don't waste it, don't bury it, turn it into something. Create, impact, because you never know how far it will go. And now, here's the part that matters for you. If this story moved you, if you felt the frustration, the clarity, the transformation, take a second to do something simple. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, Subscribe for more stories like this, because every like, every share, every comment encourages us to create more and reminds everyone that your voice matters, even when systems fail, even when people ignore you. Remember, life will test you, but how you respond, that defines your story. Not the frustration, not the delay, not the broken guitar, but your choice. Create, don't react. And that's how you leave a mark.